Coming up on Tech 95, OSX and iOS updates, Apple CEO gives us a sneak peek on what's in the company's roots, top 7 Apple successes and failures, and more. It's all coming up next on Tech 95. This is Tech 95, Episode 4, recorded on June 12, 2014. Rise of Yosemite.
Hi, this is Jonathan Hewlett.
And I'm Travis Smith.
And welcome to Tech 95.
Let's see here. It's been a huge week at WWDC for Apple, and so we're gonna start off with a little backtracking.
Yes, and before we go any further, we just want to make this clear: we're not a strictly PC organization. We will work with Linux, Sun Microsystems, Macintosh, DOS, any other operating systems besides Windows. We're mainly use Windows machines because that's usually what's
the main system.
It still holds about 85-90% of the market,
something like that.
But we will work with other operating systems. So anyway, back to what we were saying. We are not strictly PC for you Mac fanboys out there.
Yep.
And we still love you Windows people.
Yep. Let's see. First of all,
we love penguins. Go on, Travis.
Well, I seen this roll through Twitter the other day, and I thought it would be a good one to share.
Yeah.
The top 7 Apple successes and failures. Sir, let's start
Then
off.
they even started. Just kidding. I'm a Windows guy. We're still okay. It's fine. Sorry.
Let's see. We're gonna start off with the successes. First one is the Apple II, designed by Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak. The Apple II is an 8-bit home computer that essentially started it all for the company. Its color graphics impressed users back in 1977 and ushered in an era of small, reliable, and relatively affordable computers for the home environment.
The IBM 5150 was another option.
Yep.
And
that's the PC side.
Exactly. And you know what's funny? A Mac is basically a PC because PC stands for personal computer, and the Mac is a personal computer. I think that the main battle isn't between Mac and PC. It's between Macintosh. It's between Apple and Windows and Microsoft. That's the battle. Because really, a Mac is a personal computer that you use at home, so it is still a PC. People get that whole terminology PC messed up so much.
Yeah, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Exactly. We'll talk about that in episode 5. Anyway, go on, Travis. I won't interrupt anymore.
Okay. Second success is iOS devices like iPod and iPhone. In 2006, when Android was first launched, many people thought that it would never take on iOS. 7 years later, that all changed, as Android is roughly 80% of the smartphone and tablet market. However, in the mid-2000s, Apple controlled a huge 80 to 90% of the market all by itself in both areas. Apple's sold over 400 million iOS devices since 2005. And the third one, iMac. Apple's iMac has been a long run of 15 years on the market. Apple's average profit margins on Macs usually been around $200 to $400 per unit, which I'm kind of surprised. Interesting.
Me too.
According to Apple Insider in 2011, Apple made more money selling one iMac than HP selling 7 computers, which, cool. iPod. The iPod is what took Apple to the next financial level. Even though the phones have made portable MP3 or MP3 players obsolete, no company was ever able to take away a large portion of Apple's MP3 market share. On top of that, they've sold a few 100 million of them too.
That whole thing about how Macintosh was able to sell a Mac for more money than about 10 HP computers, that is one of the drawbacks. I'm just going to say this right now. Mac products are expensive.
Yeah, they are quite pricey.
They're good products, I'll say that, but they're extremely expensive, and just that's one reason Windows took off so much. Not every Joe Schmo can afford a Mac. Windows is affordable. If you treat it right, it'll treat you right. You don't give it a bunch of junk, it won't give you a bunch of junk, But anyway, back to what he was saying. I'm the Windows guy.
Let's see. Apple Macintosh, or the original Macintosh back in 1984.
Yes.
Apple's Macintosh was one of the first computing devices to be mass-produced, featuring a graphical user interface.
That is true.
Apple did take this idea from Xerox, but the company made several refinements and sold a hefty amount of them as a result. Apple PowerBook, which is a laptop. When the PowerBook was first announced in 1991, it gobbed up 40% of all notebook sales. Apple PowerBook line was also won many design awards in the early goings. Not bad for a product that launches the $2,300 price tag.
Yeah, the PowerBook line was popular.
Yep. App Store. Like the common saying, there's an app for that. This is where it started. We hate to admit it, but Apple's App Store is the most profitable ecosystem for app developers. Even though it only comprises 20% of the market, it produces upwards 80% of all revenue, but made by Apple app developers. Apple also takes home a hefty 30% cut of each app sold, so it definitely is one of the biggest cash cows. And we're reading this off of Maximum PC's website.
So it makes sense why they're kind of a little more biased to PC. Their name is Maximum PC.
That's not quite what they meant, but
I know, I'm just saying.
Switching to Intel processors. Apple made a fantastic decision going with Intel processors over IBM PowerPC platform. Not only did Intel's x86, which is 32-bit CPUs, help with power consumption, but it allowed Macs to run Windows if need be. Now we're going to go on to the failures of Apple.
Now as for Apple's failures, the Newton. Apple's attempt at a PDA, that's what the Newton was. It wasn't a great product at all. Unlike the iPhone of today, which is very extremely light, the Newton was a brick weighing about 1.42 pounds. To make things worse, the device had a price tag of about $1,000, and it had pretty terrible battery life. It was terrible. The G4 Cube, oh my word, I remember this. The G4 Cube was a 7x7x7 small form factor Mac, which was discontinued 1 year after it was launched. Users complained there were cosmetic defects with the G4, besides the fact that it looked like a giant silver brick. Many people reported the units had cracks in the transparent housing. Another reason the product flopped was its $1,800 price tag and its
Ouch.
limited upgrade path. A user's upgrade options was limited to adding in an airport card
Which
or
is a
more.
Wi-Fi card.
Yeah, a Wi-Fi card, airport, whatever, or more RAM. iCloud.
Now, I've heard mixed results about it.
Yeah, what they're saying here is it's a service that's supposed to just work. Hasn't since it was introduced as a mobile me in 2000. According to The Verge, developers had a difficult time getting their applications and data to sync with the backup client. Some developers say that some of the data never gets sent back up to Apple servers. Users have also reported that the service has redundantly backed up their data, thereby making an inefficient backup solution, which is why we here at Tech95 recommend using Dropbox.
Yep, I use Dropbox for basically moving stuff from
Computer to computer and putting it on the web if you
yeah,
don't have
because I can even access my Word documents on my phone.
Pretty much. So if you want to use Dropbox, you can try it free at www.dropbox.com.
Yep, sign up for free and you get 2 gigabytes of data for free. That's
no
free.
Obligations. No obligations. The next flop Mac had was Ping. Apple's attempt at a music-based social media website. Ping was released in 2010 and didn't gain traction in the marketplace. Probably because iTunes, they already had that.
Yeah.
I don't understand why they tried to do 2, because they already had iTunes.
I think from what I'm reading here and what I've used with iTunes,
They wanted a website to do it.
yeah, they wanted it more of as like a forum.
Kind of like Spotify. No, Spotify's like iTunes.
Yeah, Spotify's like iTunes.
Yeah, they wanted more like a forum so you could discuss music and how they should make it better, and
And then iTunes would be looking for it and buying it. I guess. Don't quote me on it. But okay.
But anyway, after it was launched, many people reported having tons of spam emails from the service. We've gotten spam from Apple all the way back to the 3.1 era when you downloaded QuickTime. It wanted you know how QuickTime is? For a while there, and it somewhat still is, you download QuickTime and they change all of your files to work with QuickTime, and you're like, no, I want it to work with Windows Media Player, and you've got to redo everything because Mac kind of tries to take over your computer with that, you know?
Right.
But even worse, Ping had many fake accounts made by people who wanted to impersonate celebrities. They have that problem with Facebook. 2 years later, Apple shut down the... I'm sorry, talking is so hard. That's one of our slogans.
2 years,
2 years later, Apple shut down the social media site and left its user base of less than 1 million people abandoned.
Nice.
Not a real good way to win friends and influence people.
And then the next one is Apple Maps. Now, I've heard some pretty bad stuff about Apple Maps.
Yeah, we've already got Google Maps.
Yeah, I recommend Google Maps all the way. When Apple Maps was first released...
MapQuest is okay, too. That's like second place. Google is first.
When Apple Maps was released, it was terrible. How bad? Someone in Australia actually got lost for 24 hours because the app missiled him to the middle of nowhere.
I'm sorry, Travis. Talking is hard.
Oh, misled.
The app misled him to the middle of nowhere.
Currently, Apple Maps app doesn't tell users that their battery level when the app is being used. Yeah, that's kind of important to know. On top of that, Apple's app is still inferior to Google's equivalent.
Well, we already knew that.
Yeah.
They're like one of the biggest names right now. Aren't they bigger than Apple?
Yup, they're currently bigger than Apple.
Microsoft is close.
And with Windows 8,
That kind of
not to offend any Windows 8 lovers,
users, but you know, Windows 8 it needs some work still.
It needs a lot
they
of
did a
work.
lot
It
of
needs
good
a lot of compatibility work.
You know, they
work.
fixed a lot in 8.1, but they need to do an 8.2. Aren't they doing an 8.2? I heard something.
Isn't it like a service pack or something?
I believe so.
Yeah, something like that.
But anyway, back to Mac's fails.
iWork, Apple's attempt to wrestle away market share from Microsoft in the word processing department hasn't gone well.
The
software is currently Mac specific, and Apple recently stripped out many of the features from the program after a 2013 update. Apple also made it free for those who recently bought Macs, infuriating users who had purchased the software for its $100 sticker price.
Which is funny because for the longest time, where do you think Macintosh got their Office equipment? From Microsoft.
Yeah.
In fact, this is a little off topic, but we do that. Back in the 80s, when they came out with Windows.
And if you watched Pirates of Silicon Valley...
That would explain it. I would recommend watching that movie. It's pretty on
at
target.
At least the ending part.
Yeah. Basically...
Because that's when Microsoft and Apple decided to make their Office program compatible with each other.
Yeah, anyway, after they'd come up with Windows or something like that, they got into a big heated argument about how Steve was complaining that it was ripped off of Mac, which, I'm sorry, but it kind of was. But Bill Gates was upset, and I don't know exactly what happened, but somehow along the line, Bill Gates said, fine, you sue us, and I'm not going to make Microsoft Office compatible for Mac. And so Steve Jobs was kind of like, okay, fine, you can do what you want. But really, Macintosh is dependent on Microsoft for Office because, you know, they can't really make an Office software any better than Microsoft's because Microsoft Office is the ultimate in Office software.
Right.
It's pricey, but it does the job really good.
Yep. Apple Lisa computer came to the market with an MSRP of almost $10,000. Actually, the exact price was $99995.
No, not $999. It's $9,999.
$95.
Talking is so hard.
Almost $10,000.
Yeah.
Take away 5. Which was especially insane for when you consider this was back in the 80s. Extremely high price made it unattractive purchase for both consumers and business professionals in 1983. Apple would eventually cease production of Lisa in 1986.
Why do you think IBM got the monopoly with the 5150? Because Lisa sucked.
Apple Pippin, Apple's attempt at a gaming console, died in just 3 short years after being released. The console ultimately failed to gain any traction against Sony PlayStation and Sega Saturn.
I've never really seen anything about the Pippin.
Yeah, that's the first time I've heard of it.
I've never heard of a Pippin.
Okay.
But anyway,
On to later notes,
this
rolled through Twitter the other day.
It's titled "Oops." Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, tweeted a photo of Mac production line running Windows. Ooh.
And this is from PC World. It says, well, apparently the one good thing Microsoft Windows is good at running software necessary to manufacture Apple Mac computers. Now, just to lay down the ground here, we're just reading.
We're just
article.
reading it off. This isn't our strict. We're not slamming Mac on our personally. This is just what we're reading.
Yep.
Remember that. Don't start hating.
I just found this on Twitter. The problem, right behind Cook is an iMac, and it's clearly running Windows. Cook
Windows 7 to be exact.
That's what it looks like. Cook apparently didn't notice his glitch, and this could be a case of Twitter Navit. How do you pronounce that? Navite?
Navit.
Navit.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird one.
Let me see.
As Cook only has 64 tweets to his name, he may not realize the full impact of his Twitter megaphone. His photos are favored and retweeted thousands of times, but just a few people noticed the Windows issue. Those people, however, began commenting upon it.
I think what they're trying to say is naive, I believe. I'm not sure.
And one person, now we're being anonymous here on these comments, made in America with Microsoft Windows.
Stephen Webster tweeted that. I don't know who that is.
Yeah. Macs are made on Windows, which allows Android to be made on the Mac. And onto the post, it wasn't totally clear whether the PC in question was running Windows XP or Windows 7, but
most commenters were leaning toward Windows XP, but to us it looked like Windows 7.
Yeah, it looks like Windows 7 in the picture, but it's too blurred out. Although most commenters were leaning towards Windows XP, it wasn't clear what application it was running. It was certainly possible that Windows was being used to run electronic design automation (EDA) software or other embedded analysis program that Apple developer base has passed over. What is clear, however, is that Apple's airtight PR machine was sprung a leak, and right from the very top, ironically, Cook himself took some hot shots at Microsoft during Apple's WWDC speech, mocking the Microsoft for poor customer adoption of Windows 8 relative to OS X Mavericks. This is the fastest adoption of any PC operating system in history, Cook said of Mavericks. Maybe so, but coming from PC World, maybe so, but Apple's assembly line could certainly use a copy.
It just goes to show, to you Mac lovers out there, we're not slamming Macs and we're not saying PCs are dominant. Windows is dominant, but we are saying Windows ain't crap. Remember that.
Yep.
And Mac ain't either.
A huge update is coming to Macintosh. It's called OS Yosemite. Now, my first thought when I seen a screenshot, it looks like iOS on iOS 7 on a Mac because of the transparent screen and dock and menu bars. Or I should say translucent. Sorry about that. The new features, it can make and receive calls, text messages, and Bluetooth mobile hotspot, and can start. I can't remember exactly what the software is called, but you can start one thing on a Mac, iPhone, iPad, etc., and finish right where you left off on another iOS device or Mac. And since there is still a ton of bugs in the system, a lot of people are recommending that upgrading your primary devices to Yosemite is not recommended.
Yeah.
Because it hasn't gone through developer stage yet, it hasn't gone through beta testing. Release date, OS Yosemite was made available to register developers on June 2nd. Well, I guess it has been. Apple has also announced plans for an open public beta on the operating system ahead of its launch.
And this is June 11th, so this was about 9 days ago.
A little under a week. Under 2 weeks.
A little bit over a week.
Yep. Users can sign up for the beta via Appleseed, and the program is open to the first 1 million users who register. Apple has not yet given a prospective date for the beta, but following the testing period, OS Yosemite will be released to the public in the fall.
And if you want to check out this whole iOS 8, which is basically...
Yep, they're also releasing iOS 8. It's designed to be more connected and more interactive with your Mac and increase battery life.
Oh, good.
The compatibility for it is iPhone 4S, iPhone 5, iPhone 5C, iPhone 5S, iPod Touch 5th Gen, iPad 2, iPad with Retina, iPad Air, Mini, and Mini with Retina display.
And it features hotspot calls and text from your Mac, group messages with voice and video, quick type keyboard and extension, better iCloud, and a whole lot more. If you really want to look into the features of iOS 8, check out the article at TechRadar at www.techradar.com/us/news/phone and communications, and it just goes on and on.
Yeah,
just look it up.
Yep, just Google it or just look it up on
And
TechRadar. Release date: developers can get their hands on iOS 8 right now, but everyone else has to wait a few months for the official release, estimated to be a little over 3 months from now.
So that'd be about September or October.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Let's see.
And on to other news. Sprint's
gonna buy T-Mobile.
It's buying it for $50 billion US.
Let's see.
That was on a PC World News article.
I got it right here.
But anyway, we're gonna do that. But
let's take a break.
let's go back in time, and now on to the section of the show where we go back in time and I do all the talking. This section of the show is History in the PC Realm with Jonathan Hewlett. Today in History in the PC Realm, we're going to go a little farther back in history. I believe in the last episode we talked about Windows. Well, this is History in the PC Realm. So, I'm not exactly sure what we talked about. That's kind of lame for me to say that because I talked about it and I can't even remember. Remembering things and talking are both very hard. But today we are going to talk about the very first version of Windows that actually caught on. In one of the episodes of Tech 95, we talked about Windows 3.1. We're going to go one version back. We're going to talk about Windows 3.0. Windows 3.0 was a graphical environment. It was the third major release of Microsoft Windows, and it was released on May 22nd, 1990. It was the first widely successful version of Microsoft Windows, and it was a rival to the Apple Macintosh and the Commodore Amiga on the GUI front. It was followed by Windows 3.1. Windows 3.0 originated in 1989 when a group of Microsoft programmers independently decided to develop a protected mode version of Windows as an experiment. They cobbled together a rough prototype and presented it to the company executives, who were impressed to approve it as an official product. Windows 3.0 succeeded Windows 2.1x and included the significant revamped user interface as well as technical improvements to make better use of the memory management capabilities of Intel's 8286 and 8386 processors. Text mode programs written for MS-DOS could be run within a window, a feature previously available in a more limited form with Windows 386 2.1. This made the system usable as a crude multitasking base for legacy programs. However, this was of limited use for the home market, where most games and entertainment programs continued to require raw DOS access. The MS-DOS Executive File Manager was replaced with the icon-based Program Manager and the list-based File Manager, splitting files and programs. And they used that into They used that up until Windows NT 3.51. That's when that whole Program Manager idea kind of died, and the Windows 95 idea with the Start button kind of took over the whole market. Program Manager was gone. The control panel was previously available as a standard-looking applet, which was remodeled after the one in Mac OS, which is one thing I'd like to say. Microsoft did copy quite a few things for Windows 3.0, 1.0, 2.0, 3.1, and things from the Macintosh, but it was still... Windows 3.1 was very popular, and 3.0 was just because, well, price-wise, it was better. It centralized system settings, including limited control over the color scheme of the interface, which was nice. Some simple applications were included, such as the well-known Notepad and the word processor Write. Pardon me. Both inherited from earlier versions of Windows. It had a macro recorder. That was a new program. It was later dropped. The macro recorder was to record keystrokes, so that you could play them back later, so you wouldn't have to take your time typing it in on the keyboard. You could just run it. The paint program named Paintbrush inherited from 1.0 and 2.0, but it was substantially improved. It is now known as just simply Paint, and the program Write is now known as WordPad. It also came with a calculator, which was also inherited, and also the earlier Reversey game was complemented with the card game Solitaire. By the time Windows 3.1 came around, it usually came with Solitaire and the known Minesweeper. Reversey kind of... Yeah. Minesweeper is fun. Reversey's... It's fun, but can get irritating. The Windows icons and graphics support a full 16 colors in EGA and VGA mode, but 2.x only had colored menus and window boxes. 256 color VGA mode was supported for the first time with 3.0. 3.0 also included a protected/enhanced mode, which allowed Windows applications to use more memory in a more painless manner than their DOS counterparts could. It could run in any of real, standard, or 386 enhanced modes, and is compatible with any Intel processor from the 8086, 8088, up to the 8286 and 8386, and even the 8486. Windows 3.0 tries to auto-detect which mode to run in, although it can be forced to run in a specific mode using the switches /R for real mode, /S for standard 286 protected mode, or /3 for 386 enhanced protected mode, respectively. Since 3.0 and later 3.1 run in both 16-bit 286 protected mode and not 32-bit 386 protected mode, applications must still work with 64K memory segments, like in a DOS, although 32-bit instructions may be contained in the code. Amy Pro was the first Windows application to require 386. Because of this, 3.0 can only access 16 megabytes total of RAM, even on a 386 CPU, which is theoretically capable of utilizing 4 gigs of RAM, which is amazing to me. This was the first version of Windows to run programs in protected mode, although the 386 enhanced mode kernel was an enhanced version of the protected mode kernel for Windows 286. 3.0 was the last version of Windows to advertise 100% compatibility with older Windows applications. This only applies to real mode. By the time 3.1 came around, they dropped a lot of the modes and just gave you the two, standard mode and 386 enhanced mode. Real mode got dropped because Windows 3.1, it wouldn't run on an 8088 or an 8086 very well at all. The main system requirements for 3.0 is an 8086, 8088, or 8088 processor or better, 384K of free conventional memory. That's for real mode. Protected mode requires a little bit more, though. A hard disk with 6 to 7 megabytes of free space, CGA, EGA, VGA, Hercules, or 8514/A graphics, and an appropriate and compatible monitor. And it also needed MS-DOS version 3.1 or higher, because up until about Windows 95, Windows NT, Windows was basically a DOS shell, kind of like Norton Commander and program operating systems like that. Windows 3.1 cannot run full color on an 8086 machine because the EGA and VGA monitors require a 286. Microsoft dropped support for the Tandy 1000 line by 1990, so a Tandy graphics driver was not provided with 3.0. However, the Windows 2.x Tandy driver could be copied into this target system and be used. Then there was a multimedia version of 3.0. It was called Windows 3.0 with Multimedia Extensions 1.0. It was released autumn of 1991 to support sound cards like the Creative Labs Sound Blaster. And you know, we know that one. It's been around a long time. As well as CD-ROM drives, which were then becoming increasingly available. The multimedia extensions were released to OEMs, or original equipment manufacturers, mainly CD-ROM and sound card manufacturers like Creative and what's the company that makes CD-ROM drives? Atapi, I believe.
Hitachi?
Atapi, ATAPI.
Tappy?
I think that was more than Mitsumi. That was one of the big CD-ROM manufacturers of the time. But back to what I was saying. The multimedia extensions included a lot of applications like a new clock and screensavers, and a CD player, multimedia support, all sorts of real good stuff. And most of the programs from 3.0 multimedia were carried over into 3.1. Microsoft developed the Windows Sound System sound card specification to complement all these extensions. If you didn't have a Sound Blaster sound card, you could get a Windows Sound System card. Multimedia extensions lacked channel mixing, so only one audio stream could be rendered at a time. That kind of sucked, but MME also supported sharing the audio device for playback between multiple applications, starting with Windows 2000 up to 2 channels of recording, 16-bit audio depth, and sampling rates of up to 44.1 kilohertz, with all the audio being mixed and sampled up to 44.1 kilohertz. And all that cool stuff like 16-bit audio depth and all that, that all started with Windows 2000. But Windows 3.0 multimedia extensions, it started it, but it was still in its baby stages. It needed a lot of work. Yeah. Windows 3.0 was the first version to be pre-installed on hard drives by PC-compatible manufacturers. Zenith Data Systems had previously shipped all the computers with 1.0 or later and 2.x on diskettes, but committed early in the development of 3.0 to shipping it pre-installed. Indeed, the Zenith division had pushed Microsoft hard to develop the graphical user interface because of Zenith's direct competition with Apple in the educational market. In December of 1990, Microsoft released an updated 3.0 version with bug fixes and improved ability to move pieces of data greater than 64K. 3.0 was not available as a runtime version, as was the case with predecessors. Windows 3.0 was unsupported as of December 31st, 2001, which is basically the same time 3.1 and all the earlier versions of Windows went out. Same with 95. Standard retail and OEM distributors of 3.0 were on high-density 1.2 meg and 1.44 meg floppy disks, but 720K and 360K versions were also offered. Fully installed, Windows 3.0 used roughly 5 megabytes of hard disk space. Yeah, so it sounds like Windows 3.0 was pretty good for its time.
Mm-hmm.
The only main problem with 3.0 was it was still in its baby stages, so it was
Crash prone.
It was prone to crash quite often. They fixed it a lot once they got the multimedia version, but in some ways that made it worse because you add a bunch of eye candy and things to an operating system that hangs up a lot. What's going to happen?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to hang up more. But 3.0 was the stepping stone, and 3.1 fixed a lot of it. Then they came out with 95, and that's kind of what we're used to having basically today, the same basic concept. But never forget, 3.0 is where Windows really got popular. That's what started the whole craze. So anyway, yeah, that's it for History in the PC Realm with Jonathan Hewlett. If you've got a 3.0 or 3.1 machine, don't hesitate to ask us for help. We're open to any operating systems. Just drop us an email at tech95, www.tech95.jimdo.com.
And the email is tech95qna@gmail.com.
Anyway, thanks for listening to History in the PC Realm with Jonathan Hewlett. Now back to your regularly scheduled Tech 95 podcast.
In later news, in recent news, Sprint is looking to buy T-Mobile for $50 billion. Now this is going to be our last article for today because of time, because we're almost at 40 minutes. Sprint, this is on PC World, Sprint has reached a deal to buy T-Mobile US for about US $50 billion, according to news reports on Wednesday. Sprint, owned by Japan's SoftBank, would pay about $40 per share for T-Mobile. The Wall Street Journal reported, citing people familiar with the matter. The deal would still fall apart.
The Journal
warned. Such a deal would combine the nation's third and fourth largest mobile operators, forming a large rival to Verizon and AT&T, by reducing the U.S. mobile market to just three major national carriers. Because of that change in the competitive lineup, the plan would probably face an uphill battle for regulatory approval. If regulators rejected the plan, Sprint would have to pay T-Mobile more than $1 billion in cash and other assets, the Journal reported. Under the prospective terms of the deal, T-Mobile parent company Deutsche Telekom would own 15 to 20% of the combined company. Reports of the deal to combine Sprint and T-Mobile have circulated since late last year. Both carriers have struggled against much larger rivals in AT&T and Verizon, and each has only about half as many subscribers as either of the two big players. Just last year, Sprint agreed to sell 80% of its shares to SoftBank in a deal that gave it a much-needed injection of cash to complete an elaborate network transformation. However, the U.S. Department of Justice and Federal Communications Commission rejected an earlier attempt to buy out of T-Mobile by AT&T, and since then, T-Mobile has introduced plans that have helped change the way U.S. carriers sell phones and services.
So once Sprint and T-Mobile kind of merge, it'll make it easier for the two to compete against AT&T and things like that, because it'll be about the same size as them once they merge.
Mm-hmm. Some federal regulations have indicated they want the U.S. to remain a four-carrier market for just the kind of competitive pressure that an underdog like T-Mobile can cut prices and choice. Absorbing T-Mobile would also be one more task for a very busy Sprint, which in recent years has been integrating multiple networks while phasing others out. The story was updated at 4 p.m. with additional details. Let's see. And this was posted on June 4th, 2014. So yeah, that was the last article, and since we're almost out of time here, John, do you have anything else to add?
Not really. I was just gonna suggest we go get some food.
Yep.
We're hungry. So anyway, thanks for listening to the fourth episode of Tech 95. If you have any questions, feel free to drop us a message. Our website is www.tech95.jimdo.com. That's TATECH95.JIMDO.com.
Yep.
And our email
is tech95qna@gmail.com. And as always, thank you so much for watching or listening.
Yep. And if you want to donate, we'll take it. We ain't gonna complain.
Yep. Or if you got a suggestion on how to improve the show, let us know.
Mama needs some new RAM. Anyway, thanks. I'm Jonathan Hewlett.
I'm Travis Smith.
And thank you for listening to Tech 95. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Bye.